examples of this, definitely in our study. All right, two types of people. All right. As a pastor, I spend a great deal of time with people who are digging themselves out from under personal catastrophes, events that were often years in the making, but which took them by surprise. A broken marriage, a financial crisis, problem at work. Why is it that we have such a difficult time recognizing the trap that we lay for ourselves? And what could this person have done to avoid the situation? The answer almost always seems to boil down to the same issue: character. Compromised convictions, reshuffled values, selfishness. Somewhere these individuals veered off the path of righteousness. But nothing happened at first, at least nothing that they were aware of. So this author is basically saying that if you look at all the issues that people get into, whether that's like cheating on their like spouse, right, or a big financial like mishap or cheating, okay, or problems in relationship or problems at work, if you look at a lot of it, it's because of that person's character, right? Like they started to lie, and then that lie just became bigger and bigger and bigger. And then eventually, or they started stealing, and then they stole small things, and they started bigger things. And then now they just, again, there's problems, right? Or they couldn't control their money. So it all starts with you as a person, right? Again, not all problems, but he's saying majority of the issues that people have, it's because of your character. That actually leads you into the dumps. Okay. We're going to have actually time to think about some of that in our lab, but I want you to consider that. All right, Luis?
There's another group of people with whom I interface on a regular basis, those who are facing the inevitable storms of life that are not of their own making, storms created by the character deficits of others, storms that are a natural part of a fallen world. There, in the midst of unjust treatment and seemingly undeserved pain, the true character of a man or woman is revealed. Pretense is peeled away, inherited, untested belief systems crumble. What you see in such moments is what was really there all along.
Okay. So again, one group of people, because of their character, you see their character flaws. Okay? But there's another case where they seem fine. Like they seem like very happy people, but something bad happens to them. Not necessarily because of their character, but something really bad happens to them. And then when they're going through that difficult time, their true character comes out. Okay? Does that make sense? So on the outside, they just seem like very happy, good people. But then when they became very stressful and anxious, or like they went through a difficult time under pressure, oh, you realize, oh, they're actually not like that. They were actually faking it all along. Okay? So again, that's another way to see. So a good example, I put example of a rat. So let's say I go up to the attic really quick and I turn on the light right away. And then there's a rat there. Okay? But the rat was always there, but most of the time I just go slowly. And because of that, the rat hears me. So before I turn on the light, the rat runs away. Does that make sense? But when I catch it off guard, then it's like exposed. So it's not that light created the rat. It's just that the light exposed the rat. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So same thing. A lot of times we think, oh, difficult situation, because of the difficult situation, or because I'm stressed, I did this. But rather, is it possible? Of course, there are cases like that sometimes. But is it possible, rather, actually, you were always this person, you were just hiding it very well. And when this stressful situation came about, it just revealed that. Because you couldn't mask it anymore. You were too, whatever, stressed or anxious, or something happened. It was out of control. And then now your true self came out, basically. Okay? Let's keep going. Bella?
And while many are broken, swept away by the winds of anger or despair, there emerges from the severest of storm a unique breed of people whose godly perspective and attitude remain intact. Clearly, there is more to them than They are the man and the woman who have invested years of their lives not in that which is seen, but in that which is unseen. These are people of character.
Right. So you see another. So that's one. This two paragraph is one group of people. These are the people with bad character, what we call. And then there's other group of people. They're under pressure. They're very stressed, and yet they keep their morals, right? They keep their values. Like they don't change who they are, right? They're still very calm, right? They're still. I mean, they're stressed, but you don't feel like they're different. Okay, and again, these are the people who actually have character. Okay, so really quick, have you ever met somebody you felt like, wow, like this person, I feel like this person is really a man of character or a woman of character, even despite like going through a very like difficult time in their life, they're like, it doesn't change them. It doesn't like break them down. Rather, they're like, I'm okay. I think Tracy, you were nodding.
Yeah,
Can you give us an example, perhaps?
your wife.
Okay.
I feel like she means like, I see her as like a really like godly person actually.
Yeah.
I think like just some of the stuff that like I feel like, normal people would be like discouraged about. She sees it in a different way than most people, and I feel like she's like I kind of like respect her for that a little bit. Like she has a very different perspective, and always I felt like always remains true to God, and always tries to like she has a very like a really good like attitude towards that. So yeah, I feel like the few times that I've interacted with her and like really got to talk to her, I feel like she's very like she's just kind of like who she is a bit. So
She seems very like steady.
like she's like whatever she does, I feel like she has like her perspective is like different from like the normal person. It's like, oh, I crashed my car or whatever, but like I feel like she sees things like in a positive light.
Sure.
Like, oh, at least like God was with me and kept me safe. Just stuff like that.
I see.
So
So same event can happen, but the perspective is different.
Yeah,
Sure.
exactly.
Yeah. Belen, Louise, can you guys think of any person with a character?
My mom.
Okay.
Because she's always kind of just told us, as siblings growing up, and she grew up Catholic and everything. But she'd always tell us, hey, be thankful, give thanks, and so after every conversation, I'd always be like, hey, don't forget to give thanks, don't forget to give thanks. And like even throughout her life, like whenever she went through like miscarriages, or even with my dad's recent health condition, like she's still, it's the first thing I would always hear out of her was like, hey, I'm praising God because your dad's still with us. I'm praising God because he can still talk. Like, cause I'm praising God because I still have me. I can still move. I can walk. I can take care of things. So for a lot of the situations that she's gone through, she's always giving thanks to God. There's also a time where they got into they had the car parked and somebody hit the car, and the first thing she says, like, well, thank God that we weren't waiting for somebody outside. So she was always just seeing everything in a positive manner. So
Very nice. Thanks for that. Let's keep going. Tracy?
Your character is who you truly are. It will impact how much you accomplish in this life. It will make or break every one of your relationships. Your character is the internal script that will determine your response to failure, success, mistreatment, and pain. It reaches into every single facet of your life. It is more far-reaching than your talent, like your education, your background, or your network of friends. Those things can open doors for you, but your character will determine what happens once you pass through those doors. Your good looks and network may get you married. Your character will keep you married.
Okay. So we kind of, hopefully this is a review for us, because in our last series, we talked about character and how it's easy to compromise our character, right? So this is kind of a review for us. But yeah, actually you guys, but specifically your example gave a good example of this, right? Your character is the initial internal script that will determine how you respond. Right? If you have a good, solid character, right? If you're resilient in your mind, then failure, success, whatever, then you're like, hey, I could be like this. But then if you have bad character, then what happens? You fail, then what happens? You succeed. So your life is constantly like this. So you're not really a person of character. You're just a man of, or a woman of circumstances. Circumstances good, my life is good. Circumstance bad, my life is bad. Right? But person of character, that never changes. In whatever circumstance, doesn't matter. They're always going to be true to themselves. Okay? And then we talked about this part as well. And then, do you guys remember it said, I think in our last study, it talked about our capacity is determined not by our competency, but our character. So same thing, right? So these are great examples, right? A very like for example, I'm sure at your hospital, Tracy, if they're very talented, they'll get hired. But if they're terrible coworkers, if they're gossiping all the time, or if they're impatient with doctors or things like that. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Exactly, right. And that's why you hire people, but they get fired, right? Because again,
Try to fire someone.
right? Because character, it's not revealed. Yeah. So again, you could get through the doors,
Yeah.
but character will determine whether you will actually continue to do well or not.
Can I say something? 'Cause
Yeah.
we kind of came up on that. I remember in one of my interviews, like my boss was more curious about like me as a person rather
Yeah.
than my skill set.
Exactly.
And what he said was, you can't teach someone to be kind.
Yep.
I can teach you all the things you need to know to be a nurse,
Yep.
but I can't teach you how to be a good person.
Yep. Exactly.
So that was really interesting.
So you see your boss or
No,
whoever,
it was a boss in Oklahoma
Yeah.
that hired me.
you see, that person knew what,
Yeah.
yeah. So that person knew exactly what we're talking about right now. Yeah. And that's what we're exactly saying, is you could always teach people to be more competent, but you can't teach people to be person of character. Okay? Let's keep going. This series is about change. Whether you like it or not, that process is already happening inside of you. It begins the day you were born, and it will continue right up to the day you die. Much of the time it goes unnoticed. Your character is not stagnant, but it is either developing or deteriorating. You are not the same person you were yesterday. True, you may not sense any change right now, but I assure you, you have changed and you are changing. So each and every one of us, every decision that we make, where our characters are either getting closer to what our ideal character is, or getting further away from our character. Whatever, because all of us have a standard. Because all of us have somebody that we respect, right? And we're like, I want to be like them. So every single day, we're actually getting closer to that person or getting away from that person. Because of all these millions of choices that we're making every single day. Let's keep going. Kev?
Whether your character is good or bad is completely up to you. Now you might say, I don't think so. There are a lot of things that impact my character that I have no control over. Certainly there are events, experiences, abuses that can put you at a disadvantage in the starting blocks of life. You do not choose your starting point, but you have the opportunity and responsibility to choose where you end up. Because character is not as much about what you are as it is about what you are becoming. It is not so much an issue of where you are as it is where you are headed.
This is really good too, yeah? Because all of us, we all started at a different point because of all our circumstances. Maybe because of the way we were raised. Maybe our parents told us, no, it doesn't matter about your character. You just become successful. That's all I care about. Or some of our parents might have said, it doesn't matter. You don't have to become successful. I want you to become a loving person. That's what matters more. Or there could have been some traumatic experiences, whatever, right? So we all start at a different point. But we get to decide where we're going to go forward. Does that make sense? So in that sense, that choice is yours. So we can't choose what happened in the past, but right now, and who we are becoming in the future, that is dependent on us. And some of us, obviously, we have to do a further journey. Like for example, of me, I think I told you guys before, I was very spoiled. I think I'm still very spoiled. Okay, but I grew up very spoiled by my parents, and so because of that, I think and I'm not like blaming them. Okay, because I think they were like trying to love me. But because of that, I have a lot of like character flaws. Does that make sense? So then I have a longer journey to go than somebody else who wasn't as spoiled as me. Okay, let's keep going. We're going to go into definition of character. Luis?
Before before we continue, let's define what character means because everybody's definition will be vastly different. In some circles, people are considered to have character if their behavior is friendly and nice. Others define character as standing up for one's beliefs.
Yeah. Good example of this is when George Floyd happened. There was a whole bunch of people saying different things. Okay, for example, right? So they said, if you're a loving person, some people would say, you shouldn't protest at all. Okay? Some people would say, if you're a good person or a good Christian or a moral person, you should protest. And there were some other people who say, you should protest, but on top of that, you need to be violent as well. Okay, so that they hear you. So if you think about it, if we actually spend a lot more time together, we will actually all come up with some different, I think mostly it will be similar, but there will be some parts that are a little bit different. Okay, because again, depending on who we respect, okay, who we like or dislike, we're going to have a various definition. So we want to make sure that we're all on the same page as far as character, definition of character goes. Next.
For Christians, good character is nothing less than a reflection of the character of God, fruit of the Spirit. Here's what I think is a biblical-based definition. Character is the will to do what is right as defined by God, regardless of personal cost.
Okay, so I want you guys to kind of think about that. So think about what this is actually saying. Okay. Okay, will to do what is right, defined by God, not by what you define as good or bad, or not by what society or not your mama or your dad tells you what is good or bad, but defined by God. And the second part, and then this is very important, because some of us, we define it based on what benefits I can get, not on the rightness of it, right? Then again, your definition of character will change again. So this is the author's definition, and the whole study will be based on this definition. Okay, whether you agree with that or not. Okay, let's keep going. So let's kind of pull this apart. Tracy?
Notice that there are two essential ingredients for character. First, character demands commitment to do what is right, in spite of what it might cost us personally. This means that when temptation clouds our thinking or doing right creates a temporary setback, we will have already made our decision based on a predetermined set of principles. Character involves doing what's right because it's the right thing to do.
Okay. Let's see the second element. Second, we must acknowledge that there is an absolute standard of right or wrong, one that exists independent of our own emotion, experiences, and desires. And that would be this aspect right here, defined by God. Okay, because we live in a culture where our society doesn't function on God's definition, right? So, for example, Christians say abortion is wrong, but there's a lot of people who say no, abortion is not wrong. Okay, so which definition are you going to go with? So again, it depends. Okay, some people say no, it's a personal thing. So whether you think that abortion is wrong or not, that's your personal. You decide for yourself, and government should have no touch with that. Does that make sense? So whether, I'm not saying abortion is right, we're not going to that, but I'm talking about, we live in a society where you go, how dare you tell me what is right or wrong for me? If I believe I'm a girl, then I'm a girl. Who are you to tell me otherwise? I'm just saying that's the society we live in. But again, character is based on, again, there is a fixed absolute standard of right or wrong, because there is God. If there is God, then there is no subjective morality. Everything is objective. Of course, if there is no God, then you could do whatever you want. Okay? So that's what it's talking about here. And then again, even if my emotions tell me, or even if my experiences or my desires, again, I go back to what God says. Okay? The standard is permanent, unwavering benchmark by which we can measure our choices. Any questions, clarification on this? On the definition of character? Okay. Now we're going to get into how does our character actually affect our relationships. Okay? Because we could see that most clearly in our relationships. Okay? So these are we're going to do this during lab 2, but these will be good kind of mirrors to see ourselves, whether our character is good or bad. Okay, and how it affects us. Okay. Kevin?
There is no clearer measure of a character than the health of our relationships. Healthy, long-term relationships are evidence of the presence of strong character. Conflict-ridden, short-term relationship are evidence of character deficiencies. Let's look at how your character will affect your relationship.
Right. Because someone who's always lying, someone who's always selfish, someone who's not very kind, someone who's impatient, they don't have a lot of friends. Right? Because they're very difficult to be with. But someone who's very loving, very giving, very serving, very patient, very joyful, I mean, every single one of us want to be friends with that kind of person. And so again, healthy, long-term relationships, it gives you an evidence. And then if you see yourself with conflict, short-term relationships, then again, that tells you your character. Again, you can blame your parents, you can blame your friends, but ultimately, you gotta be responsible for yourself too. All right, ready? Let's go into it. Luis?
Relationship with God. The instant we knowingly compromise your character, a change takes place deep inside us. In that moment, we become keenly aware of a disparity between God's standard and the one we are living out. We are filled with a gnawing sense of unworthiness and we feel distance from Him. We call this feeling guilt. Once we feel distance from God, our tendency is to avoid Him. Eventually, some think that God will never accept us back. This only makes us avoid Him more. For example, Adam and Eve. Therefore, to avoid the pursuit of character is to jeopardize one's walk with God. However, the opposite is also true. As you begin to focus on character, you'll become increasingly aware of His presence and power.
This was so new for me, but it makes a lot of sense. If your character is flawed, then whenever you come in front of God, you always feel bad. Right? Because you got issues, right? You got character issues, then you feel bad coming to God. So what happens? Then you, with your relationship with God, you don't feel good. And so therefore, you and your relationship, it breaks down with God. It never goes deep. It's always, I'm interested. Nope. I'm interested. No. And then it just never gets deeper. Why? Again, it goes back to your character issues. Because you come in front of the great light, right? Like the perfect God, then you always feel you're not good. Okay? So again, this is not saying because you're not good, God doesn't want you. That's not what it's saying. It's actually the opposite. Because we're not good, we don't want to go towards God. Just like Adam and Eve. God actually comes towards them even in their sin, but they're the one who run away because they feel unworthy. So it's really interesting because most of the time when we talk about character, we're talking about human interaction. But we actually don't think about if we have character issues, then it's going to affect our relationship with God as well. Very interesting. It's something new for me as well. Let's go to the next one.
Relationship with ourselves. Guilt is simply a byproduct of their failure to meet their own standards, as if they were two people in a single body. One half somehow feels like it has let the other half down. It feels unworthy and unreliable. The result is lower self-esteem. In addition, we must always deal with the consequences of character deficit. We become our own worst enemy.
Do you guys remember when we were doing our boundary series? We talked about one of the most difficult boundary is actually not with other people, but it's actually with ourselves. Because we live with ourselves. But a lot of times we set boundary on ourselves, but we keep doing the stuff that we tell ourselves we shouldn't be doing, right? Yep. So it's that kind of similar thing, right? There's one side of you where you go, oh yeah, this is what it means. Because every single one of us, again, we have our own definition of what is good, what is not good, right? But our actual self never meets that, right? So we're always failing on that if we have character issues. Then one half of ourself hates this self. And this half of ourself doesn't feel very good about ourselves. So we always feel down. But what can we do? We can never run away from this person because this person is also me. Right? So that's what it's talking about. That's why it leads to low self-esteem then. Unworthiness. Right? Depression. Loneliness. Oh, nobody likes me because I'm this kind of person. Who's going to like me anyways? That's kind of like bad, lot of negative thoughts, right? So again, it's affected by character. Okay, we don't think about it like that, but again, it's our character, it's our actions. Okay, it's our virtues. Okay, let's go to the next one. Whose turn? Is it Tracy or is it Belen? Belen? Oh, you already read.
Our relationship with others. We live in a world where compromise is the ruling principle. You'd think by now that it wouldn't surprise us when someone does us wrong. Nevertheless, it does. We can accept the general notion that the world is full of evil, but somehow it never ceases to amaze us that someone would treat us unjustly. This is because we operate from a position of our expectations. If we treat someone with a measure of character, we expect a similar response in return. Unfortunately, this is sometimes not the case. Think about this. At the bottom of our expectations lies a self-centered motive. We agree to be people of integrity as long as we receive reasonable treatment in return. This small qualification turns the issue of unmet expectation into a character issue.
Okay. This is really good too. This whole thing, it's like when I was reading it, it's really good content. Okay? So the basic idea is we all understand we're not perfect, right? But why is it that when somebody disrespects me, I get so frustrated or I get so angry or I get so bitter or disappointed? Because, okay, if I say, well, this is not a perfect person, then shouldn't I be okay? No, right? So we have a underlining presupposition or underlining expectation. So it's basically, if I treat you well, I expect you to treat me well as well. So it's kind of like, I will scratch your back and you scratch my back. So all of us, we have that expectation of one another. Okay? Let's keep going. Even though we know people are evil or people are sinful or people are not perfect, and yet we still hold on to that thought. Does that make sense? Whether we like it or not. Okay? And that's why we get disappointed in people and we get upset at people. Because in the end, we go, I have treated you in a certain way, so I expect you to treat me in that same, at least in that same level. It doesn't have to be better, but at least that same level. But a lot of times, it's lower than that, or it's much lower than that, or not even close to that. And we're like, this person's whack, and things like that, okay? So let's keep going. Character is not only about submitting to God's standard of right and wrong. It also means surrendering to God our expectation of others. Okay, this is really hard stuff, okay? So there's a lot of stuff, but it's really good, okay? We aren't willing to suffer the personal cost if it includes being wronged by others. But if we extend anything less than the grace of God to those who wronged us, then we fall short of God's standard. So basically, it's saying character involves loving our neighbors as ourselves, even when they don't reciprocate. Okay, do you guys know what it's saying? So it's basically saying, it doesn't, Jesus actually talks about this all the time. You're not a loving person because you did something good when somebody else does something good for you. Even sinners do that. Do you guys remember that teaching? Okay, so he's saying you're not any different. If somebody treats you nice and you treat them nice, like, you don't have to be a Christian to do that. Anybody can do that, right? Because we have this. But true, what it's talking about, Christian character means, okay, I go in not thinking, oh, okay, I'll give you this much, Luis, and I expect this much from Luis. But I go in thinking, I'm going to give this much, and even if Luis just gives me this much, I'm always going in with that. I'm always going in with this kind of mentality that I'm still going to love that person. And that's what's Christian character. And that's what God calls us to, basically. That's what it's saying. Okay. Let's keep going. Yeah, and then we're going there. Yeah. Kevin?
Of course, this is absolutely difficult, but once becoming a person of character becomes your life ambition, you will see being mistreated by others as an opportunity to demonstrate character rather than a setback. Unless you relinquish your expectations of God and receive from Him instead, you'll find that you're much less likely to be disappointed by those around you.
Okay. So, of course, again, this is difficult, but again, this is what character involves. It doesn't, I don't need to be a person of character to treat somebody nice. If Luis treats me nice, it takes zero character for me to treat Luis back nice. But if Luis treats me like crap, but I still present him with love or patience, that takes a lot of character. And that's what it's. Do you understand what? And again, that's what relationship with God or others. That's what a person of character does, though. If you think about every person, a person of character, okay, like someone who's very patient, we say people, wow, this person is patient. Not when they're like the patient, for example, is being like, oh, they're very nice and this person is listening and being patient. That's not patient. Anybody can do that. But if that patient is like throwing their poop at you and things like that, and this person is still like, I'm going to treat you with respect, then you go, wow, this person is a person with character. Does that make sense? Okay. Hold on, let me finish and then you can ask, okay? But so right here, this is very difficult because again, we ourselves, we need respect, affirmation, love back. But again, for us Christians, we have to realize we can't get these things from, or we can't expect these things from human beings. But instead, we have to get these things from God. So a lot of times what we do is, oh, I'll treat Luis really nicely so that I can get some affection back from him. You know, oh, I'll spend some time with him because I feel lonely. But I'll make it look like, oh yeah, you know, I want to spend time. I'm the good person here, kind of a thing. Rather, I need to receive that from God. And then when I do give, then I'm not expecting, if he gives me this much, great. But I'm not expecting that. And that's what it's talking about over here. Not that you're not important or you should just give until you're tired. And it's not talking about that. Or have no boundaries, right? It's saying, no, receive from God. But again, having good character, godly character is not to have this expectation of a similar return in back. I'm going to give this to you, and what you do with it is up to you. But I did my part, and I'm receiving from God. Yeah. Okay. Question. I did answer it? Okay. Yeah. That's why I wanted to explain everything first. Okay.
I feel like this is very difficult, but it's a lot easier with people that we don't know versus people that we do know.
Okay. Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I think because like with like strangers or I don't know. That's a really big question. Like
Yeah.
if I think about it, like as far as like.
Are you talking about like just being nice to strangers?
No, like
or
for example,
patient?
like patients, right?
Uh-huh.
Versus like coworkers.
I see.
Like,
I see.
You get what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
because you have a more like relationship with your coworkers. Like
Sure.
the patient is like they could be crazy, like you said, they could be throwing poop at you or whatever, you know? But like I don't know, it's just easier to do it with people that
Sure.
you're
But I think
distant with.
And I think what that is with your coworker, you feel like you guys are on the same level.
Yeah.
Whereas the patient, you know that you're going in as a caretaker, like
Yeah.
a servant, right? That's your work kind of a thing,
Yeah,
right?
I get
And so you expect less from them. And so even if they give you less, you're like, that's my expectation going in. Whereas your coworker or your spouse, right? You're like, I gave you this much, then you should be giving me this much because we're equal in that sense, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. All right. Our last slide. Our community. I think we read. Yeah, go for it, Luis.
Our community relationships, our characters revealed in the dynamics of our homes, our work, the church, and every other arena and community where we're involved. The collective integrity of a group of people determines the success or failure of that community. In order for our communities to remain functional, the individuals within the community must be functional. Godly character must not only be present, it must be predominant.
Yeah. So the basic idea is you can put one person that has terrible character and you put that person in a community, it will destroy that community. Okay? But the opposite could also happen where there could be horrible people, but one person of really good character could go in and influence them and change them. That can happen as well. Good example of that happening is, do you guys remember the movie? I talked about this in the sermon. The SDA guy, the SDA soldier guy, Hacksaw Ridge
Oh yeah.
is a great example of that. He's like, I'm a man of character, and even if you beat me up and all that stuff, I'm not going to kill people, and I'm going to save people, and whatever. And then he ends up saving them, and because of that, he earns everybody's respect, and changes their character. So that's an example of him going in, one person going in, but changing his whole community. Right? So both of these things can happen. So again, our character, it affects our community, our family as well. Okay, let's keep going.
The principle of self-government rests on the premise that when a person or entity fails to govern itself internally, it will eventually be governed by outside forces. When a child cannot obey household rules, the parent steps in and implements control. On a larger scale, when a country fails to govern themselves effectively, they become ripe for revolution or hostile takeover by another country. Regardless of the size or type of the community, the key to its success is the character of its individuals.
Yeah, so the second part is this idea that if the community, okay, you know how we use the word like support a lot, but how we use it in 2023, the word support is like, oh, you're doing a good job, you're doing a good job. Like, oh, we love you, whatever you do, we love you. And that's what we think of support. But what it's actually, that actually will kill the community, right? What actually real support, okay, is yes, that's part of it. But on the other side too, if they're struggling or if they're doing something wrong, then you could tell them, like, hey, what you're doing, I'm worried about you. I don't think this is good for you. That actually corrects their behavior then, which also helps the community as well. Okay, so again, same thing with a child, and give an example of a child and parents then, right? If the child does whatever he wants to do or she wants to do, then again, that family, it will fail very quickly because everything will be disorganized, everything will be out of order, mom and dad will be unhappy. What happens? Everything is falling apart. So there needs to be order, there needs to be love, but there needs to be also truth as well. So that's what it's talking about here. All right, last part, and then we'll finish. Did you just read, Tracy? Okay, go for it.
There is always a way to deal with differences in a way that demonstrates respect for all parties, but that assumes adherence to a standard that values respect. It assumes that both parties are committed to doing what's right, regardless of the personal cost. Dealing with differences and even conflict successfully requires that all parties place a premium on integrity, honesty, fairness. In other words, character.
Right. And so just like what I explained right now, right, to be able to support them, but in sometimes very difficult manners, to speak the truth, again, these things, it takes character, a person of character. Right? Again, these are the things that's going to help a community. If you just go, oh, whatever, let them just do whatever they want, and then they just go down the gutter, then what happens to the community? Right. It also breaks down as well. So every single part of the person forms a community. Right? And so again, same thing with our church, right? We're all individuals. And because of our all individual characters, that's what determines. It's not just one person, a pastor, that determines the community. But a lot of people think that. But it actually takes a group of people. And then you could see, oh, it's really healthy. Or it's not healthy. Okay. Any questions with any of the things that we talked about? Okay, well, we're going to go into lab and actually, do a lot of these things ourselves and to look ourselves in the mirror. And then afterwards,